It doesn't have to be complex for it to be hard. It doesn't have to be complex for it to be like mystifyingly beautiful. You can't be clear enough. You know, whatever you think you need to say verbally or musically, say it as clearly as you know how all the time.
Welcome, everybody, to Nashville Drummers Podcast, episode the 70th.
It's pretty crazy. We've hit the big 7-0. Thanks to everyone that has been supporting us all this time. Today's episode is a great one with Mr. Jordan Perlson, kind of a hidden local legend in town. If you know him, then you definitely know. If you don't know him, then you're about to get to know him.
Yeah, get knowing, because the dude is a crazy G. We had a fantastic conversation ranging from topics like, should you go to the gym as a drummer? Is there any value in that? Spoiler alert, yes. And the fact that if you grew up around mountains, you're probably insane. And I can attest to that.
Yeah, that would explain a lot for you, Nate. But yeah, it was such a pleasure to sit down with and get to know Jordan. Right out of the gate, he offers some truly valuable advice for drummers looking to land a gig, maybe with a certain artist or a group that has been on your radar. We go through his time studying at Berklee College of Music, as well as his time in New York City, including a stint with Blue Man Group. Besides being an incredible drummer and teacher in town, Jordan is also a published author. He has 2 books out under Mel Bay Publishing, so definitely check those out, and we'll link to them in the show notes. Also, you can catch Jordan play live every Monday at the Underdog with the Guthrie Trap Trio. You will not be disappointed.
One thing I really enjoyed in the conversation was his talking about the concept of bulletproofing yourself around a concept. Taking one thing and expanding what you can do with it and how comfortable you are with it, rather than adding 50 new things, taking one thing and doing it 50 new ways. And he has some pretty good methods for that.
And a quick plug for the Music City Drum Show happening July 19th and 20th. Visit musiccitydrumshow.com and still use the code NDP at checkout for 10% off tickets. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Nashville Drummers Podcast.
Happy 70. Here we are.
All right.
What's up, man?
Not too much. What's up with you guys?
Just chilling. You
It's
know.
our second podcast of the week.
Nice.
Yeah.
Doesn't always happen.
Yeah, this is a busy week. I'm liking it.
Lots of human interaction. Lots of questions being asked.
Yeah. And destroyed with answers.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. What'd you do today?
I spent the first few hours of the day volunteering at my son's daycare because they're a bit short-staffed right now, and they asked some parents to chip in some time. So I've been doing that every morning this week.
How old's your son?
2.5.
Awesome.
Yeah, he totally rules.
What's his name?
Ethan.
Ethan. Okay.
Yeah, he's great. Every time he goes into my studio, even though I've got I'm only slightly exaggerating, infinite sticks, mallets, and brushes and hot rods. It's like I just actually started going through it to get rid of a bunch of stuff.
Really?
He manages to find the exact same one and hit everything once and then drops it and walks out. Drops it like mic drop and walks out.
I've completed. That is drumming. I have done drumming to its completion.
It's like, Dad, you're overthinking this. It's just this.
It's this.
Yeah.
They've all been played. Once they've all been played, you can go home.
With this mallet every time.
Yes.
Does he have a favorite mallet?
He does. Yeah. And to be fair, it's one of those Super Bowl mallets, so it's not impossible to pick out of a lineup, but he's 2.5.
Yeah, still good.
And there's 8 million things in those series of stick bags. And he finds that one. Just walks out.
Now, seeing that, do you assume he's going to end up being a drummer or a mallet player or something?
No, although he does have a pretty visceral reaction to rhythm and groove. He's aware of when something's really hitting. He's
that's cool.
This is hitting, Dad.
Yeah.
It's never me, but when we put something awesome on.
Well, okay, well, give us some examples of what's awesome and what he responds to.
Yeah, I made a playlist when he was born that was called like Ethan and Dad's like dance party playlist.
Oh, I love that.
And it was all like MJ and Stevie Wonder and, you know, Jamiroquai and all sorts of stuff. It's just stuff that was like, I knew how sleepless times were about to get. So I was like, what's going to keep me going when I need to make sure I'm going, you know? And then hopefully he won't have like a totally just like, you know, negative reaction to all of this. And so I would play that playlist all the time and add stuff to it as I thought of it. And he totally took to it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's pretty great.
Wow.
Yeah. There's no lack of like terrible YouTube children's content playing in our house at any given moment, but I can also turn that on and he digs that too.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Does he do Bluey?
Well, Bluey's actually, I mean, for everybody, I don't know if you guys have kids, but like,
Not yet. Trying.
Nope.
Best of luck. It's the best.
Yeah.
Bluey's like top of the food chain quality wise.
I went to my best friend's place and they're like, hey, let's watch a couple episodes, like almost for fun. Let's watch a couple episodes of like, this is pretty good. I'm like, all right, hey, it's not bad.
I mean, I can get into the weeds as to why Bluey's like many cuts above, but
Give me the overview of why Bluey's the superior children's programming that doesn't drive adults insane.
every episode has unique music written and produced for it.
That's
all of
sick.
which is awesome. And I'm not saying that like, and I haven't seen every episode. I haven't seen every episode 100 times like some parents, but every episode I have seen, I'm just like, I want to know these composers. I want to know everything about them and what went into the writing of this particular piece for this, you know, and that's just one piece for that episode. There's multiple unique pieces for every episode.
Interesting.
And it's all great. The dynamic between the parents is really great, and the parents like interactions with the kids
Yeah.
is like is like positive and like kind of realistic. Like there's an episode where the mom is just like totally touched out, and she's just like, I need physical space from you kids,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna lose my mind. You know, it's like that's important for everybody to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Adults can have problems and be annoyed too.
Exactly.
In fact, we do
Yeah, it's
all
bad.
the time.
it's happening right now.
It's right here. I am. I have problems and I'm annoyed.
Well, what a start. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I'm really interested to learn more about your career. You have a pretty extensive bio. I was reading through earlier, going through Blue Man Group and you know, your career as a touring drummer, session drummer, producer, jazz. Now that I know you're into bagels as well from New York, we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we got a lot to get into,
And
guys.
I think if you remember, we got connected kind of through Grace Goodman. Her episode we were talking about, she mentioned taking lessons with you, and so
Yeah,
that kind of was a natural connection there.
totally.
But
Yeah, it's funny. I think she came for like her second lesson the day that episode came out. So she like happened
okay.
to mention it.
yeah,
And then like 2 hours later, you guys tagged me and I was like, wow.
yeah, we posted a clip and just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, where do we want to begin? How long have you been in town?
Coming up on just about a week, it'll be 9 years.
Okay,
Fantastic.
wow.
Yeah. What
What's
about you
that-
guys?
What's that feel like? I've been here just quick. I've been here since 2020.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'd see 2016. So
Nice. Oh, yeah, about the same.
we're about the same. Yeah.
I'll stop asking you guys questions because your fans probably know all the answers to these questions. So
Maybe so.
you say fans?
There's just one guy.
it's just Daryl.
Yeah, it's just
you know?
Daryl. We love you, Daryl. Shout out.
He's up there actually. Yeah, we
Yeah.
keep,
He lives
keep
upstairs.
your fans close. Yeah. Well, they say it's a 10-year town, right? That's the cliche.
If that's the case,
What do you think about that?
fingers crossed.
See, it seems like stuff's going pretty good for you.
I mean, it's going well. What I always say is I feel like I spent the first 4 years here not really being here because I was still touring a lot with New York folks. Slash somewhere in that time, I got the gig with Adrian Belew, who lives here, but is not really a part of the scene here. It's more of, he was like, his career was like peaking and totally rocking when he moved here. And he didn't move here to continue his career as a Nashville guy. He moved here because he and his wife wanted to start a family, and her family lived nearby. And he knew he would be gone a lot, and they would need grandparents and aunts and uncles to help. So he's lived in Mount Juliet forever, but he doesn't like do sessions or local shows or anything like that. So it didn't really help my Nashville spider web get any bigger by playing with him, but it helped everything else about my life and my career for sure.
Yeah.
And around the time that gig kind of started to slow down, it just kind of dovetailed right into COVID. And I remember thinking like 2019, I was gone 9 months of the year on the road, not just with Adrian, but with lots of people. And everything just like nothing overlapped. It was like this bizarre, you know, it was the universe being like, well, you wanted to work more. And like,
I'm going through that right now.
And it was just like, it was all great stuff. It was Adrian, Charlie Hunter, Bob Lanzetti, Becca Stevens. It was like, it couldn't have been a cooler group of musicians for me to get to work with, but it was just like, I don't know if I can handle this. This is so much.
It's a lot.
And I had 2 legs of a tour get canceled. So it was like, it would have been even more.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta figure out how to be home more and like do more stuff in town and like really commit to like being a Nashville guy finally. And then 2020 hit, and it was like, well, I'm home
There's
more,
your
but
answer, yeah.
I'm home more, but there's nothing
Not
to
quite
do.
what I wanted, but
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and so kind of ever since then, ever since we kind of made our way out of that period, I felt like a little more a part of the town and the scene and stuff like that. And yeah, things are great. And no complaints. I really like it here a lot.
Yeah.
I was going to ask how the whole gig with Adrian came together. How did you guys connect? What did that look like?
So, before I get into that, I want to advocate for, and people ask me this question a lot, and I tell people this, whether it's students or interviews or whatever. It's like, if there's a gig you're interested in, you should do some non-creepy homework and legwork on how to try to get that gig for yourself. You know, like, there's nothing wrong with being proactive. And I say that because I moved to town, like I said, in 2016, and I had 3 people on my I gotta get in a room with this person list. And it was Jeff Coffin, Victor Krause, and Adrian.
That's a great list.
Yeah, and I was like,
Starting with Jeff, yeah.
and I was like, whether I end up playing a lot of music with these people or not, I just want to like, I have to like, they live here. I want to play.
You want to be surrounded by the
yeah,
talent
like
that's here.
whether I'm a part, whether I can like I can insert myself into their scene, or we can create something together or not. If I can just play 2 or 3 tunes with these people before I die, at least I live in the same town as them, and I can try to like check this off my list.
Yeah.
You know? And so
That's a legacy thing.
it's just more of like a knowing that I'm not leaving anything on the table thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, for myself. And I luckily, Jeff and I had a ton of mutual friends. And as soon as I showed up, they were all like, well, you guys got to know each other. So a lot of people connected us right away.
I love when that happens.
Yeah. And we connected musically and personally right away. And we've been very, very close friends kind of from the minute I moved here. And we have a bunch of groups together, and we're working on our second trio record. It's going to be out hopefully later this year, maybe early
Awesome.
26.
Incredible,
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear
Which
that.
is with Victor. That trio is with Victor.
Love that.
So those two, like, it's like total dream come true.
Wow.
You know, for sure. And with Adrian, I moved to town, and I was like, you know, he lives here, and I only have one person in common with him, and that's his current drummer. So I can't call that guy and be like, dude, can you introduce me to your boss so I can have your job?
Any advice on stealing your gig? Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So I just wrote Adrian through his website, said, hey man, this is who I am. I live in town now. I know all your music. Tobias is an incredible drummer. But if you want someone local to like workshop some new songs or just jam or whatever, I'm around, and I would be honored to play with you. And his wife, who's his manager and runs his website, wrote me back a couple times. We went back and forth, and it kind of just trailed off from like okay, good to know you're here. You know, catch you later.
Cordial.
Yeah. And then like a couple years later, Tobias called me, and he was like, you live in Nashville now, right? He's a New York guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I do.
He's amazing.
He's incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
He's like quite literally like unreal, you know? And he was like, Adrian has this really short kind of clinic/performance thing that's driving distance from Nashville that I can't do. Do you want to do it? And I was just like, yes. I didn't even look at my schedule. I was like, whatever it is, I'll cancel, move things around.
Yeah.
You know, and I actually had to do a whole lot of scheduled gymnastics to make it work. But I was like, I'm not doing this. This is exactly what I've been waiting for. And so I did that, and it went really well. That was at the Sweetwater Music Festival thing. We drove up to Fort Wayne. And
It's coming up, Gear Fest.
Right, Gearfest, that's it. And it went really great. And, you know, a couple more sub opportunities for Tobias with them. And then it came time that Tobias was just ready to kind of move on to something else. He'd done it for a really long time. And I was, I think, just kind of the most accessible and reliable sub that they had.
Yeah.
And so they offered me the job.
Yeah, that's not a mystery hearing. It's like you were already doing the thing,
right?
It's like,
yeah,
why risk bringing in someone new?
Yeah, and plus, as a side note, and I don't know who these other drummers were, but apparently a handful of people kind of came into sub at other times throughout Tobias's tenure, just pretty unprepared. Mm. And I'm not like, I don't even have names to name, and I hope I'm not calling anybody out who was on that list, but the other lesson being like, if you're going to do something, like really do it. Yeah. Unless you don't want to do it, and that's totally fine too. But I was like, I couldn't wrap my head around someone showing up to an Adrian Belew situation or something of any of that level. It's like any level of unprepared.
Yeah.
So what did preparation look like for you in that case, and what does it look like for you generally?
Yeah. So for that gig, they sent me one YouTube link because there's I don't know if you guys have ever played the Ardmore Music Hall outside of Philly.
Heard of it. Never played it.
Great venue. I don't know if they have like a camera and like a video audio AV situation there, or if there's just like a pretty serious fan who shows up all the time. But like there's many, at least Adrian gigs from that venue that have like a great clear video shot and excellent audio. And they're long gigs. I think he always does 2 sets there.
Yeah.
And so they basically sent me the 2 links to those 2 sets, and they were just like, just learn this. This has everything you need. It's like a current, recent live versions of everything, which is what you need. You don't want to be learning stuff from records from 30 years ago that
it can help get, of course, like get a baseline.
Get a baseline, exactly.
Oftentimes the live version is different. There's hits, there's moments.
And plus like some of this live stuff had evolved so much, I kind of didn't know what to make of it. So I had to go back to the studio versions to kind of like understand what it was originally. So I was like, oh, that's what they mean, but it's this other thing now.
Exactly.
Because you need to know, it's like learning like the root of a word.
Yeah.
It's like give me the Latin root of this so I can now understand.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. That kind of represents what the record versions are versus a live.
I think so, especially if you're adding decades of evolution on stage.
I like that.
So between kind of those, that's what prep went into for that gig. And these days, I mean, that's like on the more complicated, involved side for sure of the music I've played, I'd say over the last like 10 years. But like I've also spent a ton of my career playing with an amazing songwriter named Becca Stevens, who's kind of in the ground up Snarky Puppy universe. Yep. And she writes pretty involved stuff. And back in the day when we all lived in Brooklyn and we would like, get together for like 5 or 6 or 7 hours to rehearse 1 or 2 songs because we had all that time on our hands as we were just children. It was great because we could just like really dig in and learn the minutia of what was going on and like kind of all be a part of the arrangement process. But now that we all have families and live in different cities, we have our first run we're doing a trio run in the fall. We haven't done band gigs like since before COVID, I think. Wow. And so like, I think, we've done a couple band gigs, but like, man, it's like very minimal. And so we're not really doing any rehearsals that I'm aware of beforehand. So I think it's going to be a lot of like her sending solo demos and her new solo record to me and the bass player, and kind of just be like us kind of crossing our fingers that we can just kind of insert ourselves into it and it works.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Who, by the way, who's on bass on that gig?
Chris Tordini has been her bass player since they were in college. Yeah, I'm the newest member of the band, having joined in like 2007 or 2008.
Well, I want to say that I mean, I would just hear your name just being in town. Like if you're a killer, your name gets passed around, and you were one of the names when I was speaking with Matt Twaddle and Leland Nelson, and you were one of the guys that came up. I was like, I'm trying to find like the dudes that I can sit with and learn some stuff from. Like, talk to him. He'll set you straight. So after this, spoiler alert, I'm going to get some lessons.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. I'd really like to do that. I need to work on my swing, man. I really need to learn to swing my ass off.
Don't we all?
Are you part of some album, Swinglandia or something? Isn't that a track? Isn't that jazz?
That's funny.
So he's in a prog band, and that's track title.
Yeah.
Nice. Swinglandia.
And it has nothing to do with swing.
Yeah.
And there's no swing in it.
There's not. Yeah.
Is there just a lot of like passive aggressive hipster like quotes and attitude?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, yeah, it's about robots.
Even better.
Yeah. I don't even know why it's called Swinglandia, to tell you the truth.
I mean, if it's Prague and it's not about robots with a superfluous title, is it Prague?
Correct.
Thank you. That's so good.
Well said. Hey, drummers, do you need a place to practice on actual drums? Drumbox has locations in Lafayette and Longmont, Colorado, and their newest location is right here in Nashville, Tennessee. You can book sessions online and get the space to yourself. Each Drumbox location is fully equipped with 2 kits, cymbals, hardware, and even sticks are provided. 30-minute, 1-hour, and 2-hour sessions are available at www.drumbox.space. Use the coupon code ANDP25 for 25% off your first session. The coupon code is valid at all 3 locations. Again, that's www.drumbox.space.
Well, speaking of jazz, take us back into your New York roots and kind of your upbringing and kind of how that transitioned to Nashville.
Yeah, I grew up in the Philly area.
Okay, Philly, gotcha.
And
so Eagles, sports?
if I'm going to root for sports, it's going to be Philly teams. But just the way that I just said root for sports gives you an idea of my connection to it.
Didn't Andrew say that this week too on our interview Tuesday? Yeah, he was like, yeah. His comment was like, why are people so immature when it comes to sports? Like people that get really upset when their team loses,
right?
That like ruins their day, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he appreciated an emotionally intelligent sports fan. It's like
I was pretty madly in love with the '94 Phillies. I think it's the year. This year they went to the World Series against the Blue Jays, and me and my best friend at the time, we like followed the whole season and got really into it. And I have a very, very vivid memory of sitting on his couch in his parents' living room, watching Game 7 and watching Joe Carter homer off of Mitch Williams and the whole thing ending. And I remember the moment the ball connected with the bat, being like, I'm never committing to a sports team again. Okay, they hadn't even changed the camera angle yet, and I was like, I'm done. This is never happening again.
That's all it took.
Like the heartbreak that I felt in that exact moment, like informed the rest of my life. You know,
sports trauma, sports, a different kind.
And I was like, I'll never do it. So I can, like, when people ask me if I, like the Eagles or Phillies or whatever, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can name 5 professional athletes total right now, like current. That's about where I'm at.
Sure.
So.
All right, that's fair.
But I'm always really happy when Philadelphia teams win. My family's really happy.
You want your home team to win. You do well.
I
want the like I'm New York sports, all thinking through Yankees, Giants, but I want the Titans to do well. Mm-hmm.
How's that going for you?
The new stadium's gonna be great. Can't wait to see it.
I just hope that both teams have a good time.
Exactly.
That's honestly one of my favorite memes.
Yeah, I did the Titans drum line, so that was cool. So I get to forget how bad they were and just have fun and get paid. So,
well, that's great.
Yeah,
that's the quote of the podcast. I had to forget how bad the Titans were.
I remember when I first visited Nashville, my wife at the time and I were looking at a house. I think we were still visiting. I don't think we lived here yet. We were looking at a house actually in this neighborhood, and it was like the family was still living there, and it was like there was a child bedroom, and it was decorated in all sports, like Tennessee sports stuff, and there was like this giant Titans flag thing above his bed, and I just like leaned my head out of the doorway, and I was like, "What are the Titans?" And the realtor was like, "Are you kidding?" I was like, "I'm not kidding."
This house is no longer available.
Pretty much. They're like, get out. Yeah. Leave the state. You're not allowed to play music.
Come back when you know every fact about the state.
Exactly. I grew up in the Philly area, and there's an amazing, obviously, history of music. Philadelphia has an incredible historical, musical footprint.
Sure.
But I grew up in the suburbs, which shouldn't be an excuse or a reason why you're not super connected with him. This is the 90s. It was like stuff, when a mile was really far if you didn't have a driver's license,
Yeah.
And
Yeah, Instagram wasn't really.
there was no internet.
There was no
Well,
Instagram,
there was
yeah.
AOL. You know,
Yeah.
there was chat rooms for you.
I remember those days.
Creepy people from wherever talking to you.
Yeah.
So
It's just become an evolved version of that. It's
Exactly.
Still
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
People don't change.
Yeah.
now there's pretend regulations about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back then there was no pretend regulations.
Correct.
We're gonna regulate ourselves.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, Meta. We're gonna change our name, but we're still evil. But we're still. Is that we're the same? Yeah.
Yeah. Are we ready to devolve into this right now? Is that, I mean, it's only the first like 15 minutes of the podcast. Should we just go?
We're going there. Yeah. yeah.
But so I was playing I was just playing the music of the time. I was super into, you know, Pearl Jam and STP and Nirvana. I'm 43. So that was like spot on the time for me. And I had an older brother too. So I was like really into Van Halen and, you know, the stuff like kind of the Gen Xers were more into. And also I definitely caught a whiff of and totally had a taste for classic rock and stuff too. So Zeppelin was super important to me right off the bat. But the thing I discovered really quickly, because I was like pretty positive I was God's gift to drums, you know, like right away. But every time I would meet someone who could do everything I could do at least as well as me or better, they also played jazz. So it wasn't that I heard jazz and was like, I love this. I didn't like it at all when I first heard it, which I think is most people born like after 1970 probably, you know, have some, you know, it's rare that someone hears it once and is inspired enough to,
Right.
you know, but it was like, well, those guys can do that too. And they're like, all the stuff I can like do pretty well, they can do really well.
Yeah.
You
That was
know
the
what I
common
mean?
thread that you saw.
Yeah. So that's what inspired me to kind of start seeking out just learning it as a skill, not necessarily like, you know, developing it as like a form of employment or a passion.
Yeah.
Just like you know, if I'm going to be this kind of athlete, if I'm going to be a basketball player, I got to jump really high,
Right.
Not just be a good shot. So I got to learn how to jump higher.
Yeah. Exactly. To use the basketball analogy, like whether you want to or not, if you're playing basketball professionally, you have to spend some time in the weight room.
Exactly.
Jordan proved that. It was like, well, that was the thing that changed for him from one year to the next. Like it's just a thing. Sometimes you just gotta put in the work on something that you maybe don't feel passionate about, but it's just unlocks something in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. That's where my kind of like, well, where jazz became a part of my journey was the inspiration for that. And then along the way, I totally fell in love with it as an art form, both to listen to and to play and be a part of community wise. And
Why do you think that was?
I think, I don't know. I mean, it took a while. I remember I went to Berklee for college, and I remember getting there and like feeling like I had this like dirty secret that I didn't really know what I was doing playing jazz, but I really knew how to fake it, you know, but I was like, I don't really always know where the form is, which like, you know, if you're not a jazz person, like form in jazz is like something very specific to jazz. It doesn't really exist in a lot of other styles, and it's not a skill set you need to develop outside of jazz and maybe a couple other things. It exists a little bit in bluegrass, but it's not as complicated in bluegrass usually. And it was just really, really hard for me. It was a very difficult thing to wrap my head around. Whereas like pop music and rock music is like form-wise is very linear.
Yeah.
Jazz forms is just more circular. You know, if you get lost in the circle and you don't have really, really good ears or you don't know the tune really well,
God help you.
You're going to stay lost.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll never forget. I was playing for a scholarship auditions or something like that, and you know, I think I was just kind of letting my mind wander, even though I still didn't really know enough about what I was doing to let my mind wander. And Ron Savage was I forget what his title was then, but now he's like the head of all the performance division at Berklee. And he's a pretty legendary jazz drummer. He played with Mulgrew Miller and a lot of great musicians. And he was one of the adjudicators. And even though I wasn't on the chopping block, I was just playing for the people who were on the chopping block, you know. He just kind of got up in the middle of one person's audition and wandered over to me, and he was like, go to the other cymbal at the bridge. Because he knew I was lost, you know, and I wasn't trying to not be lost. And I went whenever I went and was totally, I'm sure, wrong. And he just sat back down. And when we stopped playing, he gave the person auditioning the comments and was like super attentive to what they needed to hear and sent them on their way. And then he like gave me a talking to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
So I spent that time like really trying to just not just be like really good at all the syncopation exercises, all the Alan Dawson stuff, but like being like to like, you know, play the role physically of a jazz drummer, but play the role musically of a jazz drummer, you know, and that was much, much harder for me. And I think it's for all of us.
Yeah. Would you say you felt, when you say like you fell in love with jazz, is that, maybe it's both, like in terms of playing, like the physicality of the drumming, or is it the music itself that you were playing along to?
I mean, I think it's both. I mean, when people ask me what my favorite kind of music to play is, because I like to play everything, it's whoever's there that's fun to play with.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather, you know, if it's a stage full of dickheads, like I don't want to play.
Yeah.
Even if they're totally killing, it's like, it's not going to be fun. And they're probably not great if they're dickheads.
Yeah.
But like, so I think I found a great group of people to play with, and a constant source of inspiration and motivation through that world too. Not that I wasn't inspired and motivated to play other styles, but it was like even more of that, you know?
Did you see jazz as like a really complex thing that you needed to, like a never ending thing that you hadn't quite yet excelled in?
I mean, not in any way more than I see any other genre.
Okay.
You know, and I think jazz is one thing you can learn, like a slap in the face from trying to learn jazz, is like, it doesn't have to be complex for it to be hard. You know, it doesn't have to be complex for it to be like mystifyingly beautiful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's good. Yeah.
And this is coming from a guy like, you know, I was coming straight out of like Dream Theater, Prague, you know, so like I was well acquainted with like plain old complicated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like the idea is just like, why can't I just make this cymbal feel like that? It's just this, you know, then that becomes this whole other part of your brain cracks open once you start asking those questions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good differentiation.
You know,
like a Prague part. I'm seeing a transcription. Like that's physically, it's going to take time to learn versus like a feel thing where it's like, if you were to transcribe that symbol pattern, it's not complex.
Yeah. There's like, if you put this down on paper, there's nothing to it, but you know, good luck ever making it sound like Tony or Philly Joe or Max or whoever.
Jazz, right? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that I have gotten the short answer from every good, decent jazz player that I've encountered is just like, well, you just have to spend endless hours playing to records and trying to sound exactly like, try your best to sound, make yourself sound like exactly how they sounded.
Right.
I'm like, there's not quite that discipline in any other genre that I'm aware of. It's more notation based. It feels like everything. Obviously, whatever. If you're learning a Dream Theater song, you're gonna learn things with a lot of dynamics too. But it's just not the same.
Yeah,
it's not the same depth.
Yeah, and there's like a more, in my opinion, a more intense level of cooperation between all the participants that are gonna like make or break the situation. I
definitely agree. Yeah.
You know, like I think, and I'm not just saying this because there's a room full of, and a listenership full of drummers, but like most genres, if the drummer sucks, the situation's going to suck, you know? But in jazz, that also applies. But if the bass player sucks, it's also going to suck.
Yeah.
If the piano player sucks, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody kind of needs to be connected on the same page, or else it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm sure that, of course, the same exists in other genres to certain extents, but like I feel like it's a more fragile situation. The groove is more fragile.
Yeah, like everyone carries a little bit more weight as an individual.
Yeah. Like you can't, like if you're on a gig, whether it's a Prague concert or you're on Broadway, like if the bass player's not like pulling their weight, the term I use is like, we can just steamroll through it. So like, it's like, man, if you're not going to get on board, like I'm putting it here.
Yeah.
And like everyone else is hopefully going to get it. And like, I'm going to get us from the verse to the chorus, from the verse to the chorus, to the bridge, to the outro.
Yeah.
Whether you're with me or not, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm going to get us there.
We're going there and I'm taking us there. I
Right.
hope you come too.
Exactly. That kind of like, well, screw it.
Yep.
I'm just going to have to just do this. Like, it kind of like that same kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's escaping me, but like that same kind of just the ability for that to be a possibility.
Yeah.
Right.
Doesn't really exist in jazz. It's just going to be if the bass player sucks or the drummer sucks, but the bass player is great, it's a long night for everybody.
Sure.
Well, the thing when everyone's improvising as much as jazz allows, that you have to have, there's a level of trust you just have to have.
Yeah.
It's on a different level. I trust you to improvise and do something cool that I wasn't expecting that doesn't disrupt the thing. Like
Right.
That's actually quite heavy trust.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it is easy to disrupt.
Totally. Disrupt is a great word. You know, I spent this year teaching at MTSU, and they had like a jazz festival thing towards the end of the semester where they invite like a lot of local high schools and stuff to come and check out the ensembles and the faculty and everything like that. And there were a lot of questions from the students about like, you know, how did you guys decide what to do? You know, in one of the songs we had played as a faculty, which was just, we walked up on stage and decided what to do. It wasn't a rehearsal or anything like that, but we know the repertoire and we know the language. We played Caravan, and, you know, the A's kind of had one, like, you know, the director of the whole program is like, he's like, do it with like a second line feel. So I was like, okay, cool. But then we're getting close to the bridge, and I'm like, I think everyone's probably going to want to do this with a swing feel on the bridge. So I knew it was my responsibility to, like, if I'm going to change the feel, I got to be really clear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
You know,
intentional.
and I think going back to that whole, like, if you're not going to disrupt things, you know, it's like, yes, we're improvising and, you know, I'm trying to be supportive and everything like that, but I'm also trusting that everybody on stage is trusting me
Yes.
to be really clear and forthcoming about what I'm about to do, because it's going to affect everybody. Because if I was just going to like land on the downbeat of the bridge and all of a sudden it was swing, we're going to have, you know, whatever 4 to 12 beats of like recovery time.
Yeah.
But if I spend 4 to 12 beats setting it up and making it super clear, everybody can hit the bridge, you know, super clean and grooving, you know? So anyway, that kind of awareness and like need to dictate and to communicate what's going on
Yeah.
is a huge part of it. Everything down, and that's even like a little bit macro. I'm talking about like if a bass player is just not going to lock up with you all night, and you can't force them into your quarter notes on your ride cymbal, that sucks too.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a little more micro, at least in my view.
Yeah, I really like that mentality. Would you say, kind of zooming out, you know, you being in town for 10 years here, and like obviously we're surrounded by country musicians everywhere and not jazz as much. Do you feel like musicians would benefit from applying that same jazz mentality? Do you think like that's kind of lacking from other genres?
I definitely can't comfortably just say yes to something like that, because I'm sure there's
Almost got him.
Yeah. I'm sure there's like a history of hundreds, maybe thousands of incredible drummers who've been in Nashville who have never even like maybe heard more than 20 minutes of jazz in their life, who do their jobs incredibly.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think everybody could benefit from like, you know, expanding their horizons and things like that. But I definitely would never just like point the finger.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking of some of the drummers that we've had on the show that are, you know, I would say doing a lot of really successful things. And I would say that they are adopting that mentality, whether they think that it's a jazz thing or not.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think just being being like a great communicator is like required of being a successful musician.
Yeah.
Regardless of genre.
Exactly.
Regardless of instrument.
Genre. Yeah.
You know.
Well said. I agree. Have you found, here's a question for you. Have you worked on your verbal communication? I know for me, I literally feel like doing this podcast and having these interviews, and just even the time I spent, I worked at Daddy's Dogs. I was a barista. Like I had like interaction things, you know, and I used that as kind of a laboratory, and I felt like that helped my playing too.
Yeah.
I felt, have you experienced anything like that?
I'm sure there are, you know, non-drumming experiences that have helped me to realize, like, what I always say is like, you can't be clear enough. You know, whatever you think you need to say verbally or musically, say it as clearly as you know how, like all the time. And even in music, if you're trying to not be clear, So this might be a little more of a jazz thing or maybe even a prog thing. You need to clearly not be clear is another thing I tell people.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to take things off the rails for a second, which is totally awesome and cool and should be done. Not everything should always just be black and white by the book, you know, but like clearly hit that turn hard, take the train off the rails, let it fall apart, make everybody on stage be like, okay, we're
gonna crash,
we're
make it
abandoning
out,
everything.
Crash hard,
And I'll trust you to like get us back on course whenever you're ready to. Like make it super clear that that's what you're doing. You know?
Yeah.
That way there's like, I don't really like, are you just lost or are we doing a thing? It's like, no, we're doing a thing. You know?
That's so good. Yeah.
Sometimes I find that when I, at least verbally, when I'm communicating poorly, I'll communicate poorly if I'm tired or annoyed. I'm like, I'll become too brief. I'm like, oh, maybe a little curt or something. I don't know. It's a bad habit.
Totally. Oh, I have just this afternoon, called up my insurance company to get some prices and to do some comparison shopping. And
Sure they love that.
it's not my problem.
Nice.
It's just the Northeastern in me just seeping out.
Good.
And I just needed one number from the person I was talking to. She'd given me a ton of other numbers that were great. And I was like, no, I just need you to tell me like what the premium is when you add all these things together, when you consider all the discounts. It wasn't a number I could come up with.
Yeah.
And she just like was not understanding. Either she wasn't understanding me or I wasn't understanding her. And before I knew it, I was like coming up on like the 88th minute of my phone call. And I was just like, ma'am, I need you to transfer me to anybody else, is exactly what I said.
Yeah.
And I was getting not just frustrated, but I was also very hungry, which is not a good state for me to be in this situation.
Exactly.
And she kind of kept talking and trying to, I was like, ma'am, you've explained it the way you know how to explain it, and it's not working. Like, I'm not understanding. We're not going to get, please just transfer me to anybody else. I'm not mad at you. I'm not going to talk trash about you.
Yeah,
this
isn't
the
working.
bus.
Yeah.
You know, but I need
But this conversation is useless.
But I need this number. I need to
love
pick
that
my
line.
kid up from
Anybody
school.
else, yeah.
I'm like, I'm not like this, like I need to pick my kid up from school. Like I need to eat a sandwich, and like I need this conversation to be over an hour ago.
Legendary.
You know, and then of course, like she transferred me to somebody else, and like within 5 minutes, I have the number that I need.
Right. Yeah. Communication's so vital.
But yeah, like I like you, like I'm a little too comfortable cutting people off. Like she kept talking, and I was like, I need you to stop talking and just put me on hold and transfer me to somebody. Like that's all you need to do right now.
Just please, I beg of you.
Yeah.
So that we can both, because that can't be pleasant for her either. Like what you're,
Right.
She was getting frustrated
I'm
too.
I'm on minute 88. So are you, and we're not going anywhere. You can't possibly want to explain this to me again, knowing that it has not worked for me any of these times.
Right.
That's fair. That's good.
So I hear you.
Yeah.
But sometimes short, even if, you know, it's motivated by frustration or hunger or anger or all of the above. Like, I don't know. I'm not a super fan of the Southern politeness thing because it's all so fake.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
I hate it so much.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that the same percentage of any population you survey is actually genuinely polite and actually genuinely terrible and actually genuinely fill in the blank. You know, whatever the customs are just fabrications put upon everybody who's gotten used to living there.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, like that. I tried to adopt it when I first moved here, and it just made me like less patient and more angry.
Yeah.
You know, just trying
Reverse,
to pretend
yeah.
to be that way.
Sure.
So I gave that up really fast.
I just don't understand not the thing here of if someone has an issue with you not being able to just address it with you directly.
Yeah.
That drives me absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do you do? If you have it's easy you could just tell me the thing you don't like that I'm doing, and guess what? I probably won't do it anymore.
Right.
But if you tell someone else and I find out you tell someone else, I'm going to do it 10 times as much until you are losing your mind. Just tell me directly. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I think, you know, I mean, personal experience, even this week I was in a rehearsal with like all new Actually, I knew the guitar player, but new artist, knew everybody, and I had to be very clear because I was running tracks. I was in, the drummer's in a pretty important role, and
and that's
kind of
a nerve-wracking position when you don't know you don't have any prior rapport with anybody.
I'm
in the room.
nervous, but I can tell they're also trying to overcompensate and like be very accommodating, which is really nice. But then there's also a level of nerves on their part too. So I was just like trying to be very clear on communication, and like they've run the set like 10 times, so they're like, "Yeah, we'll hit whatever you want to hit." It's like, well, I want to run the show, and then. So yeah, I had to be very like intentional about transitions and things that I knew that I wanted to polish even more. But communication,
yeah. How do you get the perfect Nashville kick drum tone? It starts with a Lowboy Leather Daddy bass drum beater. This leather-faced beater occupies the sonic space between felt and wood beaters. It's punchy enough to cut through the mix on those 4-on-the-floor barn burners with the warmth you need for slow ballads. Okay, but who plays a Leather Daddy? Garrett Goodwin from Carrie Underwood's band uses one. Lee Brice drummer Donnie Marple plays a pair. Walk down Broadway any night of the week and you're going to hear one. In Nashville, you can test drive a Lowboy beater at Drumbox and grab one at Forks, Drum Supply, or Nelson's. Check out lowboybeaters.com to learn more.
So take us through Berklee, and then what's next after Berklee for you? Because you ended up teaching there too, right?
I did some masterclass kind of. I was never on faculty, but I've done some teaching through the school. Yep. And but I moved to New York kind of right after graduation, and I was in New York for 12 years, and that was everything from jazz gigs to singer-songwriters, where I met Becca Stevens and her band, and played in tons of rock bands and cover bands and things like that. Just whatever was needed to pay the bills and try to grow some semblance of a career. And after 12 years there, I kind of felt like I've been all over the world. I've never lived anywhere but the Northeast, and New York is not getting any more sustainable as a musician.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah. I mean, nowhere is, but New York really wasn't.
Yeah.
Especially in that period of time. And so, like I said, my wife at the time and I were just looking for something different. And so we came down to Nashville a couple of times to visit and check some things out. And we loved it. And I know I'm just like dancing right through.
Oh yeah,
New York,
I'm not done with New York.
I
want to hit other things.
But yeah, that's how I got from there to there.
Sure.
Yeah. From B to C.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, New York, specific New York stuff, like Rockwood Music Hall, which maybe you guys have or haven't heard of.
I've heard
but
of it.
it just closed, which is really sad.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah. I mean, it opened the same year that I moved there, and it was like very much like our place.
Yeah.
Every single person I have musical history with in New York it's not just played a gig there, I played 100 gigs with them there.
It seems like almost like the basement here.
Yeah.
That's like, we've all played there.
Yeah.
The original basement.
Yeah, totally. And so it's funny, my very first gig there totally sucked. It was with some guy who I'm pretty sure I connected with him through Craigslist, like looking for a drummer.
Incredible.
It was like my first month or two in New York, and I was just scouring the early versions of what we now know as the internet for work. And this guy was looking for, I remember I went to like some really far away, inconvenient place to do a very long and unpaid and unsatisfying rehearsal with this dude. And he was like, it's at Rockwood Music Hall, which I was like, in my mind, I was like, that sounds like this big, amazing place. And it was at Rockwood, what would become Rockwood 1. At the time, it was just Rockwood.
Yeah.
Which is a tiny little place. So tiny that the drums don't fit on the stage, And I just remember like, we played to like nobody. It was like the first gig of the day in like the spring or the summer. So the sun was still up and it's all windows. So I was like, I'm playing in this like sunlit bar, to like nobody with this terrible. And anyway, it was just funny that like terrible first experience, amazing subsequent 800 million experiences, And so the Rockwood scene was really important to me. 55 Bar was incredibly important to me, which also closed. But like pianos and Arlene's Grocery, the living room, there was a place in Williamsburg called Spike Hill for a while that had a whole scene kind of revolving around it. So like those are a lot of just a handful of the places I would frequent, both to like hear music and to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. The time.
And what about Blue Man Group? Was that also in New York and Denver?
That was I was a part of the Astor cast.
Okay. Yeah. That's where my first Blue Man experience was.
Yeah.
That might have been like a high school field trip.
Mm-hmm. Which also just closed a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Which is unbelievable.
Wow. Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah. It's like it's all just getting erased. But that all came to be someone I knew from Berklee was doing like production work for them, you know, like that, like the mid 2000s was like money was growing on trees for Blue Man Group.
Yeah.
And so they had this very expansive company kind of behind the show. You know, that's when they started making records and started dabbling with touring and things like that. And so they were having an open call. And he was like, he emailed me out of the blue. I hadn't talked to him since school. And he's like, I heard you're living in New York. I work for Blue Man. They're doing an open call. If you're interested, here's the address and the time. So I went, and it went really, really well. I think they were pretty actively looking for a new drum sub, and they selected somebody else from that crew, but they gave me very favorable feedback.
Sure.
And
okay, so were you auditioning for the band or to be an actual...
In the band, yeah, that's a good distinction. I was never a Blue Man nor auditioning to be a Blue Man.
Gotcha. I could see you though, you got the physique. I
feel like you do. Specific. You've got.
But look surprised really quick. Okay, yeah, you can do it.
Yeah. You got a picture of me with no ears and no hair.
Yeah. You said me too? I'm honored. Because honestly, I first saw Blue Man, it like changed my life. I was like, I did want to be a part of it. I never actually seriously went for it, but
well, it's not too late in other cities.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I was just auditioning for the band just to be a drummer in the band, and
the band's badass.
It's super. It was super fun, so I did it. They eventually called me like a year later to see if I was still interested because they had eventually sent a tour out, and it was just this experimentation thing where they were going to send a band out, a tour out for like 2 or 3 weeks, and it sold out so fast and became so profitable so fast. They just kept adding on to it. So by the time I think the band was like, the whole crew was stepping onto the tour bus, the tour had like doubled in size and length, and it just kept getting longer. And I feel like they went out in the spring or something. And at least back in my day, the holidays would come around and Blue Man, they would do 4 shows in a day during the holidays.
Yeah.
A noon, a 3, a 6, and a 9.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And the drummers and the Blue Men are not allowed to do more than 2 shows in a day because it's too physical. Everybody else can do more than 2 if they want or can, or that's the way the schedule works out. Yeah. But they had a mandate. It was like, it's too physical. We don't want people to hurt themselves. We want you to be able to come back tomorrow and play more shows. Yeah. And they were down 1 drummer because the guy who was out on the tour, they expected to come back in a few weeks, and he'd been gone like for 6 months, and he wasn't going to be back for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that's when the schedule gets insane. Yeah. So they were like, well, call that guy from that audition, and see if he's still interested. Yeah. So they like quick trained me in like the month of like September, October, like that. And I was like in, and I kind of think about my time in Blue Man in like kind of 2 chapters. It was like, there's the pre-recession chapter where I did it for like a year or 2, and I was young and had like a lot too much ego involved. Like anytime you do a show like that, or really any gig, because I was a sub, and even though a show like Blue Man's really creative and they encourage you to, express yourself, of course, within the bounds of the language of the show. Yeah. What they're really saying is sound as much like you can like the main guy. Right. If you're going to go jump on like an artist gig, they just want to just sound like the guy.
Don't insert a halftime feel if it's don't
yeah.
Unless we've all agreed upon it before.
Don't do the fill from Smooth. Just randomly.
Nate,
sorry.
Or do it all the time. Yeah. But I was totally not doing that and getting plenty of talking tos. Really. Yeah. And I was like in my mid-20s and had thought I had too much to prove. And
to be on a gig like that, especially with it being so popular, it probably was hard to kind of come down.
Absolutely.
And, you're on top of the world. You're playing.
Yeah, and like
group,
there's like this super fun drum set with like 8,000 toms and like China's on both sides and like double kick that they really don't want you to
use. No one can really
use.
see you. So like, did that kind of feel like you were kind of masked from even more freedom to kind of express yourself?
I don't know. Maybe.
I've always thought about that.
Hadn't occurred to me. That's totally possible.
I don't know.
Yeah. But then the recession came and they just kind of didn't need me anymore because the show count went down so much and I was the lowest guy on the totem pole. And that dude on the tour was coming back.
Yeah.
So they just kind of stopped calling me, which was totally fine. And like, I don't know, 3-4 years later, I just remember I texted my old boss who I still was in touch with. And I was like, man, I kind of just miss playing the show. Do you need someone to do like 1 or 2 shows a month? You know, it'd be really fun to just hit those drums again. He's like, actually, we kind of need somebody again right now. So I kind of came back in like 2013-ish and did it till I left New York. Oh, cool. And that time, a little older, a little wiser, I was like, I'm just going to try to be transparent, both on and off stage. Like, I'm not going to like give notes to anybody after the show. Like, I'm not going to tell someone that I think they could have done something better, you know, which is a big part of,
Is that what you were doing?
If it occurred to me, I think I probably wouldn't have thought twice about not doing it. Okay. But like, and that's a big part of like theater culture, you know? Yeah. And I guess I think I probably embraced that the first time around. Yeah. But I just kind of decided, like, I'm not gonna, like, if someone asks me a question, of course I'll answer it. I'm going to be friendly. Yeah. But I'm just going to be like a very friendly, speak when spoken to person and try to sound as much like Josh, the main drummer, as I possibly can. Yeah. And that worked out way better.
Yeah. There you go. There's a lesson learned. Yeah.
Definitely.
It's cool you got to come back. So you kind of got to evolve your own performance of it.
Totally. And I felt like I kind of got to like redeem myself musically and personally with everybody there.
Yeah. I feel like most people don't get that opportunity.
Definitely.
Do you happen to know Corey Boyes, drummer here in town?
I don't think so.
He, remember, he auditioned for Blue Man Group. He kind of gave us that whole story. But he actually auditioned to be a Blue Man? To be a blue
man,
guy.
that is an intense situation.
he got the runaround. I mean, yeah, it was a lot. And it was super, probably even more so, very specific.
Oh, yeah. And the thing they always say is it's easier to teach actors to drum than it is to teach drummers to act.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're just a drummer who fits the physical profile, it's a huge uphill battle.
Yeah.
You know, but for me, it was a great experience.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, especially my kind of second chapter.
Yeah.
You've heard of Drum Supply, but you gotta see their shop. It's a drum shop experience like no other. They're packed with all the gear a working drummer needs, and so many parts, noise toys, and accessories. It's a toy store. Curated cymbals, kits, and snares. The hands-on percussion room is nuts, and their custom shop work is fast and affordable. Andy and the guys know their stuff, and they're ready to help. And the big news? They've just moved to an awesome new location near the corner of East Trinity Lane and Dickerson Pike. Still in East Nashville, just a couple miles from their old spot, the all-new Drum Supply is twice as big, featuring a dedicated cymbal room, a lesson space, and even more drum gear than ever. Go see the new Drum Supply shop for yourself. Now open 11 to 5 at 2211 Dickerson Pike and online at drumsupply.com. So what's your arm routine? And real question, it's very apparent, obviously, you take care of yourself.
Thank you.
What correlation do you see with taking care of yourself physically, hitting the gym, lifting weights, things like that, and your sound and your ability to play? Have you seen any changes in your playing as you're, I'm assuming you weren't born buff.
No, yeah. and I've gone through extremely not healthy periods, very not buff periods.
Yeah.
I don't want to draw anybody's attention to the Meinl product videos from like 2019, but very not buff, very not healthy in those videos.
Okay.
But I think honestly, I want to say like, yeah, I get a better sound because I can do X, Y, and Z because I think I'm just more confident.
Yeah.
More self-confident. It's completely in my head.
Yeah.
I think there's a long history of absolutely incredible not fit drummers.
Yeah.
So I would love to believe that every hour I spend in the gym correlates to some other level of musical prowess, when really it's just like I can feel better about myself and not spend energy being insecure.
Yeah,
and that allows
that's
me
huge.
that
That
allows
alone,
me
yeah.
to think more clearly with the sticks in my hand.
That's massive.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's-
And I guess moreover, you wouldn't say that it has hurt your playing in any way.
No, but I will say there are certain movements that if you overdo it, which is the same, you could say the same thing for anything in life, there's a serious point of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And like I got, like one summer, I got really obsessed with, I was like, I'm just going to do some absurd amount of pull-ups every day. And hopefully, and I was actually pretty heavy at the time. So I was pulling a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Not heavy like with muscles,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I was like, I'm going to do these pull-ups every day. And then by the end of the summer, I should be able to do a strict muscle up. Like that was just like what I told myself.
Yeah.
And not only was I not doing any muscle ups by the end of the summer, but I had awful tendonitis and tennis elbow, just from doing like weight, like, and I have friends who are like calisthenics, not just like, they're full on gurus,
Yeah.
who are like, why are you doing so many? Like they're the guys that are like, don't bother with barbells, don't bother with weights.
Yeah.
You just need calisthenics. And they were even like, what are you doing?
You're doing too much, man.
Yeah. I was like, I can't feel my hands most of the day, and I think it was really from pull-ups,
Yeah.
so that's, that will hurt your drumming if you can't feel your hands.
I've had the reason I bring it up is because I've had.
You look quite fit, sir.
Thank you. I think there's some benefits to it. Even just health and longevity wise.
Of course.
And I've run into a multitude of people who are resistant to it because they think it's going to impair their playing somehow. Like, well, I'm afraid of getting stiff. I'm afraid of getting bulky. I'm like, well, stretch and don't eat in a caloric surplus of
Right.
1,000 calories a day, and you're not going to get huge.
And also don't eat garbage that's going to get you super just like inflamed.
intake.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the being like the fear that being bulky will make you stiff versus eating total garbage, which will like
that will make
destroy
you
your
stiff.
joints.
Yeah,
like that should be really like that should be the thing.
Yeah, like the cookout that I ate before I came here, that's going to have me just a little bit inflamed, and I'm frankly embarrassed.
But sometimes you just got to go get cookouts. dude.
Sometimes,
It's all good.
close to-
But I liken that, as I know what you're talking about. I've been privy to and witnessed those conversations, and I liken it to, especially if you're paying attention to the fitness world. On the female side of the fitness world, there's the whole thing of like, I don't want to be bulky.
Yeah.
And then the female fitness professionals, not the influencers, but the fitness professionals being like, do you know how much work you have to do to get bulky? Like, and how insulting you're being by saying, I don't want to be this way, so I'm just not going to do it. As if you do it twice, you'll be bulky.
Yeah. By the way, if you can get bulky straight up as a female, especially if you can become muscularly bulky, you should probably be in the fucking Olympics.
Right. The whole, like, if you're a drummer and you're worried about, lifting some weights and becoming bulky, like you should do it, man. Like if it's that easy.
Dang, yeah, because people work their whole lives and don't get there. Yeah,
Exactly.
And, just to put a bow on the gym discussion, I mean, you could just, doesn't have to be weights, go on the treadmill, just move your body. It's just always
Absolutely.
very healthy.
Yeah. Weights aside.
Cardio.
To your point, and to the point of like both longevity life-wise, but longevity, say on like a 4-hour no breaks gig.
Yeah.
Having some like solid conditioning going into something like that. If you're doing that multiple times a week, you probably don't need to hit the treadmill. But if you're not doing it,
two today.
yeah, 2 today. Your conditioning is cool. Is good to go. I think
So
you
the
check that
cookout's
box.
fine. Don't worry about it. We've offset that.
But if you're not doing gigs like that, but you have to do one, it's like occasionally, you probably like could go for a run.
Yeah.
A couple times a week or whatever the equivalent of.
True. Yeah, I don't now, but I was wearing. My wife got me an Apple Watch, or she just gave me her old one. I can't remember. I think she gave me her old one. Anyway, I wore it for a few weeks and just
I'm like, I just want to see how many calories I'm burning on one of these.
Insane.
Like, I burn 1,500 calories on one gig downtown. Like, that's, I don't know how accurate that number is. It's probably somewhat accurate.
Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I turn mine on gigs too, and it's
nasty.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen this drummer lab? They've been doing these experiments on. This is my shout out to my buddy Frank Zambrano from New York, and they're literally like tracking.
Yes.
And he's actually a New Yorker. He's doing Kimberly Akimbo musical here in the pit, and it has all this. It has energy, heart
That's
rate.
cool.
I have seen that. That is super
I don't
sick.
know if they've done any Nashville drummers here. That'd be cool to see.
I'm volunteering. You want to test me on a gig?
We're gonna reach out. Drummer mechanics and ergonomics research.
Please.
Dr. Nadia. Okay, Nadia, we'll be in touch.
Link it up.
There you go.
Done deal. Consider it done. I've decided for you.
Awesome. Well, I mean, on that subject, I mean, how do you, having a family here in Nashville and doing all that you're doing with performing and recording and teaching, do you have any sort of routines to stay balanced and both physical health, mental health, of course, as well?
Yeah. I wish I had like a super solid answer to this, but routines were so much easier before there was a baby in play. Babies just kind of like, they're the best thing in the world. And you know, I don't resent my son in the least for destroying all possibility for routines. I love routine.
Yeah.
It's really the only thing I ever truly loved about the road, because it's like the easiest way to get into a routine was the time I've spent on the road. But as it's the closest thing you have to like every day being the same. You know, so if you're motivated to build a routine around that schedule, you can do that.
That's really true. I noticed your face when you said that. I feel like that's not the way touring musicians typically talk about the road. It's more of like, it's just freaking chaos, and I can't wait to come back to a routine.
No,
but you're right. I mean, you have a day sheet. You got, here's when we are playing. Here's sound check. Here's
and the variance day to day is pretty minimal.
Right.
You know, like whether it's a drive day or a show day or an off day, like those, like it's really one of those three.
Yeah.
You know, and they're all pretty similar in how they interact with each other. Yeah. So, you know, of course I wasn't like lifting weights, but there was a period of time when I was on the road where I was doing all the like it was called Beachbody at the time, but they're the ones who make P90X. Yeah. And I was doing P90X and a bunch of other programs from that company with bands. So I just had like my little pouch that had all my bands in it.
Yeah.
You know, and this was back in the days of like, you had to have all the DVDs. So I had my like P90X DVDs, and I just like put it in the DVD slot in my laptop. Laptops had DVD slots, kids. And
those were the
days. And like built right into it. You just slide it right in.
They're bringing ports back. I don't think they're bringing the DVD back.
No way. Yeah. But, and I remember I would just like, you know, and I just had the one I was going to do that day. And if I had to wake up, I just had to wake up before van call. This was not a bus tour. So I had to wake up before van call, and I'd be tired, but if I was tired, I'd just go back to sleep in the van, you know?
Yeah.
It's like so not complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really not.
Versus like, if I'm like, well, if I get up at 5 a.m. and work out, my son won't wake up before he usually wakes up. That's the day he's going to wake up before he wakes up.
Right.
You know, normally wakes up. And my wife works a really demanding day job. So I try really hard to not, like if he's going to wake up randomly early, I don't want it to affect her sleep.
Yeah.
You know, so like I don't want to go to the gym and not be home, and he's going to wake up and she's up, and like it all just becomes chaos, you know? So it's basically like you're fitting it in whenever you can fit it in, and you try to prioritize things as responsibly as you can.
But to your credit, especially with on the road, as you described, I mean, that takes discipline.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
Like you said, it's easy, but not everyone, I feel like most people don't do that. Don't act that way.
They don't. Yeah. And Asha was just chatting about this with my wife. Like I'm a very, means driven person. I'm not really driven by the end that much, you know, like I never begin like a new fitness phase with like I'm going to have a giant back at the end of this. It's more of like I saw this series of workouts on the internet, or someone told me about this like version, this other thing I can like adjust about my workouts. That just seems fun and interesting. I'm just going to do that.
Yeah.
And if I reap some physical or internal benefit, cool. But really, I just want to stay active and feel healthy and be interested while I'm doing it. That's really all it comes down to. So
the best workout is the one that you will do.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the few workouts I'm so not interested in is spinning class.
Yeah.
Only because the bike seat hurts my butt and I don't want to be yelled at, you know? And I'm a guy, and most of my fitness world in the last 50, I feel like, is this a fitness podcast or a drum podcast?
It's all the above.
Yeah. It's
Probably more so not a drum podcast.
Mostly what I've done, the majority of what I've done has been CrossFit.
Yeah.
And what I always say is like, I don't know, like I've never been yelled at through a microphone at CrossFit, you know, like it's mostly people just coming over and being like, hey, try not to like arch your back so much when you go down. Like just use your, you know, like we're all talking like in indoor voices at CrossFit, but like I need to wear earplugs if I'm going to go to a spin class because I'm already hard of hearing.
Yeah.
And
people like to call CrossFit a cult, but let's talk about spin classes.
let's talk about Soul Cycle for a second.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But so there's a very short list of stuff I'm not interested in doing. And that's, but like you said, it's like all that matters is that you like doing it and you're going to go back every day. Yeah.
Yeah, if it inspires you. Well, sometimes I'll have to like gamify it in my mind. I'm like, I'm a warrior. It's like you know, whatever. I'll like play out something in my head. I'm like, it does keep me.
It's also just because you're a child. I feel like at heart. So
absolutely.
That's so wholesome. Yeah. Yes, Nate, you are a warrior.
Yeah.
Yes. You're a ninja. You're whoever you want to be.
I'm a monk warrior.
You are a monk warrior.
I like that.
So okay, that means to an end. I want to go back to that. That's interesting. Would you say you apply that to your drumming career as well? Like
Totally.
You're not taking gigs to reach a certain level. It's just like, well, yeah, I'm gonna play with these guys, or I'm gonna do this tour. I'm gonna record on this music that I like, and
yeah, I mean,
feel like you're more present having that mindset.
I think so, and it's not a conscious. It honestly isn't a conscious thing, and I think it's give and take. Like I think I was actually just having a chat with somebody about this in the sense that the stuff I like to practice and the stuff I teach is rarely like, let's transcribe this song or let's learn this solo, or God forbid, it's like, let's check out this lick on Instagram. It would never be that. It's more like, what do I hear that's lacking in my own playing, or what's challenging me on my gigs, and how can I create an exercise around it to bulletproof myself around that hurdle, you know?
Yeah.
Not just be like, when I see that specific hurdle, I'll know how to jump over it. Not like there aren't infinite hurdles after that one that are going to be similar, but not exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like to me, preparing for one hurdle is just a waste of time. You know, I mean, nothing's a waste of time when there's drumsticks in your hand, but like there's better ways to spend your time.
I like that. Yeah.
And like I've transcribed so little in my life, and I'm not saying transcription is bad. Again, there's no time wasted spent on this stuff, but like it's more of like what am I hearing that's inspiring me, that's exciting me, and how can I create a whole universe of that for me to like wrap my head around, as opposed to like how can I create a novella around that little idea as opposed to like one paragraph.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So and I think that's an extension of the whole means versus end, you know, attitude. Like I said, it's not conscious. It's just I think it's just the way I'm wired.
Yeah.
You know, even, you know, I remember, not to get back in the fitness world, I trained for the New York City Marathon, and then Hurricane Sandy washed it out.
Yeah.
And a whole crew, and a whole marathon's worth of people didn't get to run the marathon.
Yeah,
and a buddy of mine was like, dude, that sucks. You did all that training. You know, you don't get to do the race. And I'm like, it's kind of the furthest thing from my mind. Like,
yeah,
I got to do all that training.
You already won.
Yeah. You know, it's just one more run.
Totally.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so
I couldn't have done it before this, but I could do it now. Yeah.
Right. And exactly.
Same with a gig. If a tour gets canceled, well, now you're ready for the next tour and the next gig.
Yeah.
It's not time wasted. Yeah.
Exactly. Precisely.
Founded in 2020, Sonique Drums is dedicated to crafting thoughtfully designed percussion accessories and steam-bent snare drums. Every product is designed and built for drummers who demand quality and reliability. Industry firsts like the NATO family of continually adjustable throw-offs and the socket drum key set Sonique drums apart from the rest. You can find Sonique snare drums and percussion accessories online or at partner drum shops across the U.S., including Nashville's own Nelson's Drum Shop. Check them out at soniquedrums.com.
Give a shameless plug for your 2 books that you have published.
They're both through Mel Bay. One is called First Lessons Cajon, and it's a It's like what they describe is that the first 30 pages, any newcomer to an instrument would need to know. Full disclosure, it is not a book on like Peruvian rhythms or flamenco rhythms. It's like how to do the thing that all Nashville drummers hate to do, how to like go to a songwriter gig and play your cajon instead of a drum set.
Yeah.
It's that, which I personally actually really love that. When I first started playing with Becca Stevens, I only played a cajon, and that's how that came to be.
Yeah.
How I came to write that book. The other book is called Learn to Burn. Take a bet. Did I come up with that title? What do you think?
I'm thinking no.
You're correct.
Yeah. You don't seem like the Learn to Burn. That doesn't seem like that comes out of your mouth.
I'm glad I exude that. Yeah.
You seem way more creative than that.
I'm so much more creative. Yeah. I'm not creative at all. I don't think I even could
Just
have
the
come up with
glasses
that on
told
my
me
own.
that you didn't come up with that. Yeah. You got style.
And that's more of like a intermediate to, I don't want to say advanced, but it's kind of like you got a whole bunch of stuff together and you just don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
It's kind of is there to inspire some new ideas and some new challenges for that level player.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What's that like being a published author? How did that come to be? Like,
yeah. So, Becca and the rest of that crew, they all went to the New School in New York, and Mel Bay's grandson, Mel Bay was a real guy, and his grandson played music and went to the New School with Becca and all of them. And he was a fan of the band. And around the time we were starting to play more, he was getting more involved with the family business. And I think they kind of tasked him with like, find some new authors for some of these books. And Cajon was getting popular. And they had, this beginner line, this first lessons series. And he said, do you want to write this book? We want to do one for Cajon. Now, I absolutely wanted to get into that world. So I jumped at the chance.
interesting. So the book was already sort of, the topic was kind of given to you, and then you were just kind of run with it.
Exactly. Which was actually like a really easy
That's cool.
ask. Like they were like, here, just color within these lines.
Yeah.
Learn to Burn, they only had the title.
Clearly.
Which was like,
I love that.
Yeah.
they were like, we want to revive this series. And I was like, cool, what is the series? They're like, it's Learn to Burn. I was like, yeah, you said that. But like,
What is that?
What is it?
this?
And they were like, well, we never really did anything with it to begin with. So we're just going to
So
start
when you
fresh.
say revive, yeah, you don't really mean revive.
And I was like, well, give me something. They're like, it's really whatever you want to do. And that was like, it was so challenging. It was like, talk about a blank canvas, you know?
Wow.
Listen, the title's too good not to do something with it.
Right.
Yeah.
They basically gave me a number of pages. They're like, it doesn't need to be more than 58 pages or whatever they said. And I was like, that's not anything to go on.
That's incredible, actually.
Yeah.
Listen, these people, they want one thing. We've received thousands of emails with these kids want to learn to burn. All right.
There's a severe lack of burn
Yeah.
going on here.
I want to see ointments being passed around willy-nilly because there's so many burns. Do we know what this book is about? Not sure.
Not a clue. Nothing. Someone will come up with that.
Yeah.
It's like that whole joke of like all the Hollywood execs sitting around and like they've got all the designs for all the Happy Meal toys and the posters for the movie and all this stuff. And there's like, this is going to be great. So where are we at? Where are they like, we're going to have a script any day now. You know?
Yeah, same idea.
Yeah. That has to be, I mean, that proves, your experience proves that is somewhat real.
On the same exact level as Hollywood, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, surely it's a microcosm.
Yes.
So is there a third book on the horizon?
There is. I'm working on a couple things that I'm going to self-publish.
Great.
Hopefully, probably realistically not by the end of this year, but early next year.
Awesome.
Do you probably want to keep the topic of the book close to your chest, or do you want to share with us?
Well, it's what I will say is it's a series of books that all kind of interact with each other, so that you can. It's kind of like they're Power Rangers on their own. They function just great, but when you kind of mix them all together,
Megazord.
exactly.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I love this. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what you do.
Me too. I hope I do it.
Well, now that this is on the podcast,
It's true. There's no going back now.
It's on the record. Yeah.
I've promised this Power Ranger drum instruction situation to the world.
Yeah.
Can't wait for it.
To the millions listening.
To Daryl.
To Daryl.
Hey, Daryl.
Daryl's going to be very pissed at you. If you don't.
I've already disappointed him too many times.
Well, Daryl's in a constant state of disappointment, so don't read into it too much.
That's why we call him Disappointed Daryl.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, the only thing I was kind of wanting to cover is just like the home studio. That seems to be a big part of what you're up to in Nashville.
Yeah.
Just kind of take us through what that's been like, and I guess in general, just being here for as long as you have, like what that change has been like.
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, it's less of a change. The change is that it's become more common, you know, because I started with an M-Box in the mid 2000s, you know, and had I still kind of have no idea what I'm doing, but you know, like I know my rig and my gear backwards and forwards. And then I walk into a real studio and I walk into the control room and I'm like, what's all this stuff do? You know? Yeah. So I don't claim to be an actual engineer or, you know, really truly know that world. Like I said, I just know what I've got.
Yeah.
And that's all you need to know.
You need to know. Exactly.
Yeah. And you don't need, I know it's a cliche, but it's the truth. You don't need a lot of gear and you don't need fancy gear. You just need to know your room and you need to know your gear.
Yeah.
And so I went from an M-Box and just working with 2 channels and learning that world. And I did a pretty massive upgrade in like 2008 or 9 to an Apogee Rosetta, which at the time was like the state of the art, best converters, fanciest gear possible. Yeah. And that interface with the pre's that I bought at that time, that was my gear up until right before COVID. So like I'll say like 12 years, nothing changed in my setup. And I just continued to learn and double down on that. And I really wanted more than 8 channels. And the technology was so old by 2020 that you just couldn't really easily add more channels. You know, it just wasn't feasible. I tried some workarounds and it just was kind of becoming an expensive disaster. Yeah. And so I sold all that gear and I got on Apollo and, you know, I'll be set for a very long time now. But the difference is the idea of like telling somebody in like 2010, just send me your tracks, you know, and people were doing that. Like I remember I took a lesson with Billy Ward in New York, like in like 2005, like early in my early days of having just moved to New York. And it was at his studio. It wasn't in his home, but he was recording himself. He had like a Pro Tools rig and the mics were set up and, you know, and like the next room was Sean Pelton's space. Wow. You know, it was like some building in Long Island City which is in Queens. And I just remember thinking like, people are doing this and I'm not Billy Ward or Sean Pelton, but like people are doing this. And I think I already had an M-Box, but I was like, just kind of like dabbling with it when I was bored. Yeah. And I think I remember coming home from that lesson and being like, maybe I should like actually learn what this thing does. Yeah. You know? And then a few years later decided to like double down and invest and get like a real rig. And yeah, at the time I feel like I got some decent amount of work, but now it's just so much more common it's so much less common for everybody to get together in one room or in one studio, and so much more common, not just to send tracks around for people to play on, but it's so much easier to just create music. You know, there's just so much more music in existence. I'm sure there's a similar statistic. What's the statistic? More pictures are taken in a day now than were taken pre-smartphone or pre-digital camera.
Really?
Yeah. Like by a lot, I think. And because you think about it, like, you know, you could take infinite pictures with a digital camera, you know, and not have to worry about space. But now you don't even like, it's always on you. It's always in your pocket now. You don't have to have the camera with you, you know, versus, you know, I'm sure more songs or whatever you're going to consider a song, you know, like the ease of just creating sound and recording sound.
Is insane right now.
Yeah, totally.
When it used to be.
Yeah. So like if someone had to go to a studio to record their guitars and vocals to then send to you to record drums to in your studio, like that's going to slow down the amount of tracks people are going to hire you to play on in your home studio versus I recorded this thing in my bedroom. Why don't you record your part in your bedroom?
Right.
You know, and there's a really good chance it'll sound great.
Yeah.
You know, So that's the major change. And it's not even so much that it's about me having lived here as long as I have. I think I would assume the whole world is experiencing that.
Sure.
You know,
How about the competition, especially in Nashville? I feel like you throw a rock and you're going to hit a 5-star home studio.
absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. Like a lot of things, I think it's less about having a monopoly or having, you know, a ton of work, and more just having a handful of people that trust you the most.
Yeah.
You know,
Having your crew, having
your crew.
yeah.
Exactly. And you know what, when we have, as drummers, as consumers, we have the same thing for ourselves, you know, so just being that person for, sure, as many people as possible, but it doesn't need to be 100. It'd be great if it was. You wouldn't be able to provide that service.
Yeah.
But if you've got 5,
Those people are going to be very disappointed most of the time. Because you're not going to be available.
yeah, but if you've got 5 producers who keep a pretty decent schedule, and like, let's face it, not every producer's putting live drums on every single song they produce. So even 5 is a lot, but it's probably like the healthy amount of work for most people, you know? And then also depends on your output speed and level, you know, and the kinds of stuff that people are asking you to do.
Yeah. It's a good point. I mean, it's so competitive, but like if you're good, right? I mean, everyone is also kind of working. Like there's enough to go around.
I think so. And also for remote stuff, it kind of doesn't have to do with the fact that there's all these people in Nashville doing this. It just has to do, like, that's a global competition.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Like the amount of people I see posting great sounding drums and super grooving and like incredibly musical. I don't know who they are, where they live, or like who they've played with. You know what I mean? But they're getting on my radar, so I'm sure they're getting on producers' radars.
Yeah.
You know? And they don't need to live in East Nashville to do that.
Right.
Or in Manhattan or in Glendale.
Yeah.
You know?
But perhaps to make those connections to begin with.
Sure.
might.
It can totally help. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be a leg up. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That seems a big thing. Well, you can, I mean, even if you just moved here for the point of living here long enough to make those connections, and then with the long-term goal of getting back out of here, although, I mean, I don't know why I guess I do know why you would. Maybe you miss the mountains. I miss the mountains.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about mountains, but I do miss the mountains.
I have a theory about mountains.
Theory, let's hear it.
If you live somewhere where you can see mountains, you're probably crazy.
Ooh. It's a hot take.
Damn, that's a really interesting hot take.
I'm not saying bad crazy.
What kind of mountain are we talking? Like
I'm saying if there's a legit mountain,
or like peaks, summits.
Yeah, that stuff.
More of that. Okay.
I feel like every time I've been on tour, I get out of the van or the bus, and I'm like, whoa, look at that mountain. The next 20 minutes, I'm like, what is with these people?
Yeah, I mean, I think the mountain's probably is doing something.
I don't know if it's the mountain, but that's the correlative data point.
Here's not to further just dig that grave.
Did you like how he resented what I said at first, and now he's like, I'm gonna.
I don't resent it. That was a miss. I didn't resent that at all.
I thought you were taken aback.
No.
Yeah.
I
noticed it.
Fascinated, and there's some evidence in your favor. So I'm from Northern California. Mount Shasta's in my backyard. Mount Shasta's 90 minutes from me. Mount Shasta, people literally worship Mount Shasta. They think it's like holy.
They think it's Mount Coca-Cola.
They think there's a thing. Do you know what the Lemurians are?
I have no idea.
Well, it's a race of people that live in the center of Mount Shasta, isn't it? That's not real, of course, but those people believe it's real. So yeah, I think maybe mountains might make you crazy. It's possible.
And like I said, it's not all crazy's bad. You're not bad if you're mountain crazy. But you're crazy.
Invented mountain crazy.
But you're crazy. That's the podcast title. You're not bad if you're mountain crazy. Done.
All right, time to go home.
Print it.
That's awesome.
Hey drummers, are you worried about losing your hearing? Did you know noise exposure can cause permanent hearing loss? Dr. Jason Baker with Music City Audiology provides mobile concierge services to musicians in Nashville and surrounding areas. That's right, he is 100% mobile and will come to you. If you need ear impressions, custom in-ear products, ear cleaning, hearing tests, or information about protecting your ears, he's your guy. Music City Audiology cares about drummers and wants to help you maintain your most valuable tools, your ears. Visit MusicCityAudiology.com to book your consult today. That's MusicCityAudiology.com.
What's a recent recording maybe that you're really proud of?
Well, like I said, the new record with Jeff Coffin and Victor Krause is coming along amazingly. So we made a trio record during COVID, which is one of my favorite things I've ever played on. It's not super recent anymore, but it's called Coffin, Perlson, Krause.
Oh, sick.
And
check that out.
It's on the streamers. And we decided for this next record, we're all like, we will be the basis of every track, but we're going to have special guests on every track. And it's awesome. Super dope. It's coming out great. So that's going to be awesome. I played for a number of years with an incredible banjo player named Alison Brown. And I played on her most recent record, which is already like a couple of years old. But I think it's called On Banjo. And that's super cool, interesting record. I'm really proud of all the Becca Stevens records I've played on. Mary Bragg is an incredible singer-songwriter who I've known literally for 20 years and have played on definitely not all, but most of her records. And she's become an incredible producer in town. I've gotten to play on a lot of really nice records that she's produced. Yeah. I play every Monday at the Underdog for anybody that's local.
Oh, I didn't know that.
With Guthrie Trap.
Yeah, I know of that.
time?
Yeah.
It's a soft 8.
Okay.
Soft 8.
Soft 8 on Monday.
Soft 8 on Monday. Basically, come, pay the cover at 8, go back out to the food truck in the parking lot, get yourself a pizza, or go across the street to the taco truck.
Yeah.
And, don't be in too much of a hurry to like make it back.
And
We'll be on at some point shortly thereafter.
All right.
But we've been cutting a few things here and there, and
Cool.
that band is amazing. We've had this regular gig for 3.5 years. It's unreal. Like,
I've heard of you. I didn't know you were the guy. That's cool.
yeah,
I'll have to come check it out again.
It's been a blast.
Yeah. Now I'll make it out. I know a guy.
You know that exactly. Who do you know?
I don't know.
Guthrie. I know the Underdog. That's why. I know.
But anybody. It's amazing. Every week, Guthrie asks, who's here from out of town, and most of the room raises their hand.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. And it's on a Monday. It's like these people are like coming to Nashville for the weekend and staying an extra day.
Yeah, that extra day is
to hear this incredible guitar player.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. There's a lot of stretching, a lot of freedom for everybody. And
I got to come out.
it's a blast.
Let's talk influences, because you are comfortable in a wide variety of styles. So who have been your biggest influences? Both singular artist drummers and just bands in general.
Yeah. Like I think every single person who owns, at least one pair of sticks, John Bonham, you just can't not mention him. Alex Van Halen is a huge one. I feel like he's like maybe one of the most important drummers in history that just doesn't get.
He doesn't get nearly enough love.
No, not at all.
Yeah, and I feel like he just somehow doesn't come up in conversation. Yet we're all wildly influenced by him.
Yep.
Like you can't. Nobody above the age of 30 or 35 hasn't heard Panama 800 times in their life and loved every single note he's played on it.
Yeah.
Matt Cameron is another huge huge influence on me. Like the older I get, the more I'm just kind of like, I think all I ever need in my life is Soundgarden.
I love that. Yeah.
And so those are probably like my 3 of my biggest like rock drumming influences. But I think my favorite living drummer, and I would say at this time, but he's really held this most special place in my heart for like a really long time now, is Jay Bellerose. I can listen to anything he's played on over and over again and be wildly stimulated and inspired.
Yeah.
And Jack DeJohnette is a huge influence. Bill Stewart is just, I could listen to Bill and Jay Bellerose are probably like, I could just put anything they're on. Like I'd listen to anything they've played on and just be totally like in it. You can't take my attention with anything else if it's on.
Well, are you ready for this?
Tell me.
Because I'm not afraid to display my ignorance. I don't know who Jay Bellerose is.
So Jay Bellerose lives in LA. He for the longest time, and I think he, might still be, but T-Bone Burnett is not making as many records as a producer, but he was like on everything that T-Bone was making for the longest time.
Oh, okay.
So he's the drummer on both Robert Plant, Alison Krauss records. He's the drummer on one of my favorite records he played on. And if you guys haven't heard it, I highly recommend it. But there's a Jacob Dylan record called Women in Country.
No.
Yeah,
that is.
Do love Jacob Dylan though.
Yeah. And like, I revisit that record a couple times a year just to make sure like all the talking up I do of it, I still believe. And I'm like, let me just make sure I'm not like faking the funk, or like drinking my own Kool-Aid here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, this is just like, this is the best,
Still valid. Yeah.
And like, much like that first Plant Krauss record, like it's the sonics of it and the frequencies of it are so intriguing. It's like what are they even doing to make these sounds? And it's so organic at the same time. So you could listen to Skrillex and be like, what is he doing to make these sounds?
Right.
But of course we understand that it's like not a lot of real things making the sound, but you're like, factually, this is only real things.
Yeah. A human being physically made these sounds.
Right. We're like, I can't fathom it. And it's so intriguing and beautiful. Yeah. So like anything, and another series of records Jay is on that I love is anything that Joe Henry has put out is almost definitely Jay.
Okay.
And if you're looking for something really specific, there's a Bonnie Raitt record called Slipstream. Okay. Half of it is produced by Joe Henry and Jay is on those tracks, and half of it is produced by Bonnie and her band. And those are incredible tracks too. Bonnie Raitt is, she's amazing, goddess. But those tracks that Joe Henry did with his crew, with Bonnie, is just like unreal.
Man, I cannot tell you how excited I am that there is a name that you're so stoked on that I have no knowledge of. It's like I get this amazing, elevated, beautiful double Michelin star dinner at home waiting for me, and I just get to go discover it.
To do a callback and bring it all full circle, maybe 2010, 2011, I'm making a Mary Bragg record in New York. We're all still living in New York at the time. And Rich Hinman, who's an incredible guitar player and steel player who was living in New York at the time, was playing on it. And he was always like and it continues to be just like, he saw the whole Americana thing coming somehow before like any of us New Yorkers did. He was like dragging his steel around New York City. Like I'd never even seen one before, and he showed up at the living room with one, and I was like, what the hell is that thing?
Is he trying to put curses on the audience?
What is that? Exactly. We were tracking one of Mary's songs, and it just wasn't quite working. And he was like, Jordan, what if it's like kind of like a marchy thing, the way Jay Bellerose does on like those Joe Henry records? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, Rich. I know exactly what you're talking. I know all of those records and that drummer you're talking about, and we were tracking very close to Union Square. And this is actually, I was going to say at the time, but that Barnes and Noble is still near Union. It is still there near Union Square, but they had a huge music section at the time. Yeah. So we finished that day, and I went straight to Barnes and Noble, and they had a thing where you could listen to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, demo stuff.
Yeah. And I think so. Yeah, it was probably 2010. So it was like the days of like you had a smartphone in your pocket and you could like find information, but like maybe like, but there wasn't Spotify to like go listen to it. It was like that in between period. Mm-hmm. So I think I was like savvy enough to look up Jay's discography and have it on my phone, walk into Barnes and Noble and find like 3 or 4 records that he had played on, listen to them a little bit, and it was immediately like, yes, this is exactly what Rich was talking about. Now I have to educate myself. And then like, I haven't recovered since then.
I'm diving in deep.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I'm excited.
If you haven't checked out that, you've probably heard tracks from that Robert Plant, Alison Krauss record.
Yep.
Dive In Deeper, that Bonnie record, that Jacob Dylan record. And there's tons more. He's always making records. And he comes to town a lot too. He lives in LA, but he's in town all the time.
Are you connected at this point?
We are. So this is a fun story. So for those not in Nashville or those who are here and didn't know, there's a jazz club here in town called Rudy's.
Yep.
And I was playing there one night, thankfully with a killing band, great band. And Jay's a pretty recognizable character.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't think just by me, because I'm obsessed with his drumming. I think like if you're even like kind of slightly aware of what he looks like, you pick him out of a crowd.
Yeah.
And he totally walked in and sat at the first stool at the bar right in front of me. And I literally like he's like, I'm like looking at this camera. I saw him sit down and I just literally like mid-song like repositioned myself on the stool, just looking at the piano player. Like I'm going to spend the whole rest of this set contorted because I can't look at him right now.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
So that was the first time.
Did you get through it? No problem.
I got through it.
Yeah.
I got through it. And he was super nice. We chatted. He was super nice and super complimentary.
Wow.
And since then, and so we have a really close mutual friend, one of my favorite drummers, a guy in town named Brian Owings. He's played with Emmylou forever. They're very close. And so for a while, like when Jay would come to town, Brian would be like, Jay's coming to town. We're going to go see music here, or we're going to get dinner there. You should come. So I would like kind of tag along, which is super cool. And then a couple times, Jay's just shown up a couple times at gigs. I really hate it when he does that. Like it's just really like,
just give me a warning.
Yeah. He came last time this happened, I was playing at Nelson's with Jeff Coffin and Victor Krause.
I've seen that promo.
Yeah. And Bob Lanzetti, incredible guitar player.
Yeah.
It was the end of a tour. We ended it there. And in walks Brian and his wife and Jay. And I'm like, well, fantastic. Now I have to play this really hard music, in front of this guy. And that was on a Sunday. And then, so I go to my Monday gig at the Underdog the next night. And he just waltzes in. I was like, man, you need to stop doing this. I can't handle this at all.
He just likes your playing, I guess.
I think I'm definitely not going to cop to that.
Yeah.
I think he loves checking out music.
Sure.
Yeah. He's not a, I'm sure he's a sit on the tour bus and read a book guy when he has to. But if he's somewhere where there's something cool or interesting to check out, he's going to go find it.
You should, you know what you should do? You should buy an AirTag, and the next time he comes to your gig,
plant it on him.
Plant it, and then you'll know going forward.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That's a good, safe, and legal thrill.
Absolutely. Yes.
Air tagging people.
Thanks, Apple.
Let's all do that. Let's all do that.
Yeah.
Do you have a memory of your first drum set? We didn't ask that yet.
First drum set?
Yeah. First
Absolutely.
drum set.
It was a Royce. They still make them. I've seen them.
That's a new one.
It was a Royce. I don't remember the sizes. I'm assuming it was like maybe like a 22, 12, 13, 16 kind of situation.
Okay, so
I haven't heard
first,
of a Royce in a while.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I remember those. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So that was the first, like, not even like a kid drum set you had, or that was the first?
I did have like a Muppet Babies drum set when I was like 3 or something that was on the sidewalk with the trash cans the following morning. Absolutely. And I was devastated.
Yeah.
My dad was like, we're not doing this, And then when I was 10, I started taking drum lessons, and it was a lot of, it was all drum pad stuff.
Yeah.
And then my folks surprised me on my following birthday with a kit, even though I wasn't learning drum set with my teacher yet. It was still all just like snare drum stuff. But they surprised me, and it was interesting. I didn't know what to do. Like it didn't come super naturally right away. I would just kind of go down and like hit the drums.
Yeah.
I didn't really know. And then my mom, who has no musical training, no music background whatsoever, was like, why don't you bring some of your tapes downstairs? Which is like those are exactly the words someone needed to say.
Thank you, Mom.
Yeah.
Oh, I love when parents are supportive and
She was
push you the right way, even if they don't realize it.
Yeah. Oh, she's endlessly supportive. So then began playing along to Pearl Jam and Zeppelin and Living Colour. Living Colour was definitely the first band I was ever obsessed with. That was like, I don't know what's going on here, but this is amazing.
Yeah.
And like long before I ever played an instrument, it's just unbelievable. And started playing along to those things, not with any intention of like copying it perfectly, just like kind of like trying to keep up with it. You know what I mean? And that's what I did. I still kept taking lessons for the next like 5 years, but never really practiced what my teachers gave me. Just kind of kept playing along to tapes and then CDs. Yeah. And then I went to the Berklee summer program when I was 15 and found out I wasn't God's gift to the drums.
Yeah. And Berklee will teach you that really quick.
Pretty rude awakening.
Yep.
And then I was like, maybe I should like open these books.
Yeah.
Like other than when I go to my lesson.
Right? Yeah.
You know, and then became like a whole new level of focus and study.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's your favorite drum book, or what are your favorites? What's the short list?
I mean, stick control and syncopation, because you can do anything with them.
Yeah, literally.
You know, I think it's really those two.
Yeah.
Because like what I was talking about earlier about like creating those novellas of exercises to then learn how to just take care of any hurdle in your way. They're all based out of those books. You know, it's like what thing can I do? Like is tongue twisting me up that I can now apply that to page 38 in syncopation or page 5 in stick control and turn it into, you know, like an exercise that no longer twists me up.
Yeah.
That I can just waltz right through it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll know I can waltz right through it if I can get from the top left to the bottom right. You know?
Yeah.
Do you remember the last one of those that you've worked on?
Which exercises?
Yeah, yeah. Like what? Yeah. Kind of. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not practicing super regularly at the moment, but I have this probably the most prominent one, and I think I may have actually given this to Grace now that I think about it. But if you take, so I have this theory that the right foot can play faster unison with the right hand than it can by itself. I'm sure I'm not the only person I'm not the first person to think of this. I'm not going to claim that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I bet not only am I not the first person to think of it, I bet we all know this instinctively, but we don't think about it.
Yeah.
You know, but if you were to like read a rhythm just with your right foot, if you were to read page 38 in syncopation just with your right foot, you could probably do it faster if your right hand was playing also. That's what I'm getting at. There's like one exercise with 3 or 4 variations. The first variation being like, just read it unison.
Yeah.
The next variation being read it unison and fill in any eighth note that isn't in ink on the snare drum. And then the next variation being same thing as the previous variation, but any series of eighth notes, fill in 16th notes with your left hand on the snare drum. And then it becomes this like cool, fun, like kind of drum and bass-ish kind of thing. And you have to keep half notes. I do half notes because quarter notes makes it feel like I'm trying to encourage myself and my students to not let it feel frantic.
Yeah.
So half notes on the hi-hat with your left foot just to keep it grounded.
Yeah. That's really cool.
That's great exercise.
And my feeling is like, if you can keep boosting that tempo and make it sound musical and smooth and accurate, your right foot will just never be able to play it as fast as it can when it's doing that exercise, but will be getting faster on its own.
I feel like that phenomenon, because I agree with you. I feel like that's like, for me, there's a clearer nervous system signal to my hands than to my feet. That's what I feel, what I've always attributed it to. I'm like, oh, if I can kind of, it's like using a tracer when you're reading quickly or something.
Right.
Yeah. Like I know.
That's a good.
I don't know. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's an exercise that comes to mind that was like, I need to do something about making my foot a little quicker other than like just trying to frantically play faster.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
just endlessly trying to muscle it out or whatever. Yeah.
And if you really want to start challenging yourself, you go through if you're not familiar with syncopation, exercise 1 is on page 38, depending on which edition you're looking at. And I think there's 8 subsequent exercises. The magical thing about page 38 is there's not a ton of like long consecutive groups of eighth notes.
Yeah.
So an exercise like that is really great for like realistic bass drum playing. You know, as soon as you get to exercise 2, there's like 4, 5, 6, 7 eighth notes in a row.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden it's like, yeah, this is challenging too.
Yeah,
it's a little less real world-y, but yeah. But you, like I said, I would never tell someone not to practice those pages for an exercise like that. And there's other exercises that lend themselves better to the subsequent pages, you know.
I really like your whole, from what I'm hearing, your whole method to the method books. Like, it's not about just getting through them. I think when we were younger, it was like, I know me, I would always like turn to the last page. It's like, can I do it? Can I finish it? But it's almost like you turn to these books in times of need, or to help you decipher maybe problems in your playing, or to get through something.
Absolutely.
You kind of pick out these exercises.
Yeah. I mean, and I think like syncopation and stick control are sort of like the Beatles of drum books. Like, you know, like there's whole genres born out of like singular Beatles songs.
Yeah.
You know, there's like infinite drum books born out of like a singular exercise somebody came up with for syncopation or stick control. Yeah. You know, so then those books are super dope too. I'm sure. I'm not saying you don't need those books, but like if you can figure out how to navigate a couple books like that and a way to kind of manipulate them for what you need, you can get so much mileage out of them.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Depth.
Yeah.
Go deep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go deep. I also really love, and just a shout out, I think it's the David Garibaldi book, like
Future Sounds?
the funky beat.
Oh.
Just with all the Tower Power
Future
grooves
Sounds great too.
transcribed. It's like, can never get enough of that. That will just always be impossible. Future Sounds is amazing too.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like when I get into a practicing headspace and I can like really try to make it last, I've always got like one Tower Power groove and 1 meters groove that I like just try to hit at the end of my practice session, you know? And it's like, this is never going to sound good. Like, I don't even know why I keep trying to do this, you know?
I'm
but it's
not
so fun.
David Garibaldi, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah. It's like, who am I kidding with squib cakes here? Like, this is just like, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been torturing myself with that for 30 years. So it's great.
I love your humbleness on that. I would be very surprised to find out if it doesn't sound damn near.
It sounds so far from damn near, but I appreciate the confidence.
Well, should we do some wrap up questions here? I know you got to go to your gig later, so typically just do some closing questions. Depending on the question, you could just answer it. We can move on, or we could divulge for 10, 30 seconds. It kind of just depends. Do you want to go first?
Let's talk some Nashville specific things. Favorite spots, favorite haunts, let's say.
I don't get out much unless I'm playing a gig these days. That's kind of the life of having children. But
gigs or a podcast.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, this was a little bit of an ask for tonight, and I appreciate you having me, of course. Yeah. But I mean, like, man, I love the Underdog. It's always going to be my spot.
Yeah.
Cal, the owner, is a really great friend and a great guy, and it's like it's pretty much the Underdog and D's are the two places left for you know, like, for that vibe, for the dive bar, unapologetically, you know, just like, this is what we are.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. You know, as opposed to like, you know, this star co-owns this bar and it's, you know, it's every day a $17 beer day.
Yeah.
You know, or whatever. You know, so, you know, the Underdog and D's.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
What is a non-drumming hobby or activity of yours?
Definitely fitness. Definitely. And I love comedy and movies.
Oh, I love comedy. Okay.
Yeah.
We could divulge there for a second.
Who's your favorite comedian right now? Stand up.
At the moment, and he's held this for me for a while, but a guy named Kyle Kinane.
Okay, never heard of him.
He's great. He's had many specials. The place I recommend people go to check him out on Netflix. They did a thing called The Stand-Ups, and it's kind of where like a lot of people became aware of Mark Norman and Dan Soder. And Nate Bargatze. Like, Nate Bargatze's like first kind of like big international awareness was the first episode of.
Gotcha.
And I think there's like a couple seasons of like collections of it. I think Kyle Kinane's in that first collection, and man, like, I could watch those 30 minutes every day. So funny.
Yeah. There's a Jewish comedian from New York. I'm thinking of Sam.
Sam Morrill.
Yeah,
He's fucking
you're a
great.
fan? Okay,
Yeah.
Sam.
Oh, he's great.
I was hoping so.
Yeah.
You didn't let me down. Yeah, I love Sam.
He's hysterical.
What's your favorite bagel?
Of course.
I mean, you mean like of the basic order?
Yeah.
I mean, and then if you have a place in Nashville where you order said bagel.
I'm an everything bagel guy.
Okay.
Fennel or no fennel?
Take or leave. Okay. I'm good. Bagel shop is great. Why am I spacing on the place on the over by Belmont? I want to say Basic Bagel. That's not what it's called. No, it's
Proper Bagel.
Proper Bagel.
Yeah.
They're great too. But like I said, I don't eat a ton of that world of foods anymore because of my jaw. So it's an event.
Yeah.
When I do that, really, what I save bagels for is when I'm back in New York.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I go to Russ and Daughters or something like that.
God bless.
This has been God bless a good bagel.
Yeah. You said it. There's the quote.
Dude, Jordan, it's so good to meet you. So good
You
to
too.
learn your journey here. And any parting words? Any way for people to get a hold of you for lessons or?
JordanPerlson.com.
Okay.
There's a couple forms on there you can fill out and reach out to me. If you're ever in town, come on down to the Underdog on a Monday. Yeah, those are probably the two main things.
Right on.
Fantastic.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
This is a blast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nashville Drummers Podcast. If you liked it, please consider leaving us a review on the Apple Podcast app.
Please consider supporting us on Patreon. For $5 a month, you can help support this dream and keep the ball rolling for us. Believe it or not, it's not free or even necessarily cheap for us to make this thing go. To sign up, go to patreon.com/Nashville Drummers Podcast or click the link in our Instagram bio. All of your help is greatly appreciated.
Visit our website, NashvilleDrummersPodcast.com, where you can listen to all past episodes, learn more about myself and Nate, and buy all your favorite Nashville Drummers Podcast merch, including t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, hats, and drum heads. Connect with us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube at Nashville Drummers Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.